What was the weirdest, most inappropriate or most unexpected thing you were asked during a job interview? I was asked over the span of about 5 questions if I would let employees steal. What would you do if you saw a customer walk out the door with product? I would tell the manager and not confront them. The correct answer for almost all retail companies. But not this one apparently. What if it was your store? Many retailers and you are the manager? I would try to stop them or call the cops. What if it was an employee trying to steal something really cheap like a $1 water bottle? I wouldn't let them steal, so I'd tell a manager. What if they have been having family troubles and their checks haven't come and so they have no money but need that water? I would offer to pay for them so they don't feel like they have to steal. What if you left your wallet at home that day? What am I even supposed to say to that? I had a guy end my interview by asking me what my favorite ABBA song was. I was so caught off guard and honestly kind of creeped out, because I couldn't figure out how he knew that I loved ABBA. I found out later that when he spoke to my references, he asked them to tell him something about me that wasn't on my resume, and my old boss told him that I was a huge ABBA fan. I kind of like this. It shows the employer is actually interested in you instead of a name from a pile of CVs. What are the chances of you leaving your spouse if we relocate you? You mean for a period of time until we figure out our living situation? No. I mean, would you divorce him if you had to move to, say, Europe for the job? Whoa. Also, this was a local advertising agency. They didn't even have that many national clients. But also, the interviewer then continuously called and messaged me for days after I declined their offer. So I don't know. First question of an interview. Wait, aren't you the guy who owes me that $1,000? Realized after 3 of the longest seconds in my life that he was joking. But boy, that caught me off guard. Joke or bribe? Wink wink. I had an adversarial interview once. Passed the skills interview and was sent on to the guy who would be my manager if I got the job. He made a big show of throwing my resume in the trash and told me the next best use would be to wipe his butt with it since he went to Yale and I didn't. And why did I think I deserved the job? I didn't say anything. Just got up and walked out. This was at AIG. Remember them? LOL. LOL, what a dong. You played it right. I was interviewing for a hiring manager position at a temp agency in Toledo, Ohio. The interviewer asked me how comfortable would I be if business client only wanted to hire certain types of employees. I probed for more information. After several probing questions, it was apparent that some of the businesses who hired this agency to find talent only wanted people from certain zip codes and wanted to omit certain zip codes altogether. I did not get the job because I stated that I would find and deliver the most qualified candidate regardless of where they lived. No biggie. I am in a much better place now. Would I be okay with going shirtless? Small private casino company that mostly did charity fake money events with prizes like champagne and chocolates, corporate gigs, etc. I was hired as a blackjack croupier and that's the job I went for. Advertised as above. Corporate events and charity events. Dealing blackjack. Must be good with people. If you knew me, that would make your gut bust. The woman interviewing me gave me the job, then asked would I be willing to wear just collars and cuffs like a male stripper. Turns out they also did stag and hen nights and would ask new employees if they'd like to be considered for those shifts. But it requires the women to wear bikinis and men to wear only collars and cuffs. No shirt but wearing dress pants. They paid twice the rate for it. Was not expecting that question, I can be honest. Does lie detector during the hiring process count? I was asked if I'd ever had sex with animals. That question certainly caught me off guard. I was a private nanny. I have been asked many questions that wouldn't be considered appropriate in any other job interview. I've been asked how often I shower, whether I have ever been to a therapist psychiatrist, if I am promiscuous, if I have ever had an affair with an employer, how much I typically eat in a day, do I have a partner, what religion I am, whether I was gay or straight, if I had ever been bribed or had anyone ever attempt to bribe me, whether I had ever taken nude pictures, etc. Not all in the same interview. If I have ever had an affair with an employer, that's just the dad trying to figure out his chances. Lovers, an adult toy accessories shop in the US hands you an elephant-sized, wiggly butt dildo and asks you to describe it. You giggle, you lose. I lost. This was quite a while ago, and I was interviewing for a janitorial position at a private middle school. The interview was going well. The interviewer was asking me why I wanted to work there, what my previous job experience was, etc. The bog standard interview questions. Out of absolutely nowhere, he asks, "You're not attracted to underage girls, are you?" I was taken aback for a moment and just sort of stared at him waiting for clarification. I think it only occurred to him after having said it how weird the question was, and he quickly started to give some context. Turns out the previous janitor had attempted some sexual advances on some underage students. I was just there to sweep the floors for some cash, not commit a felony. In context, makes sense. Out of context, sketchy as heck. Which teacher did you hate the most and why? I answered that I had disagreed with a teacher over a book. I didn't like it and it was her favorite, and she knocked points off all my future tests. Interviewer said it was unprofessional to not like a teacher and I clearly had no interview experience. So yeah, didn't get that internship. You dodged a bullet. Imagine having to work with that moron. I once had a cold on the day of a phone interview at a speech therapist office. I started the call by apologizing that I was losing my voice and explained I had a cold. The interviewer, a speech therapist, asked me twice what was wrong with my voice. The first time she asked, I repeated that I had a cold and asked if that was relevant to the interview. It was not, she assured me. The second time she asked, I told her thanks but I wasn't interested anymore. Seems like the kind of thing a speech therapist should be able to remember. What kind of pee do you like? I was in the process of getting a government job that required a high security clearance. I was being interviewed by an agent. Most of the questions were pretty basic but this one caught me out of left field. They didn't ask me that. They asked me if I was a sexual deviant. I made her explain what she thought a sexual deviant was. One interview I was asked 2 weird questions for an interviewer's list. 1. Favorite superhero and why? 2. Do you believe in aliens? Why or why not? 30-second elevator pitch. For an IT security position, if your employer asked you to do something illegal, would you do it? Now, before anyone hollers that this isn't inappropriate, I found out later that the job had been vacated by a friend of mine, who they fired after he refused to do something illegal for them. In my experience, a lot of illegal things are asked of IT. Can you make your breasts smaller? They might be a distraction for some of our patients here. This was at a hospital, and I wasn't wearing anything provocative. I just have big boobs. I didn't get the job. They told me it was because I was too inexperienced. They asked me if I could stop my dialysis treatment so I can be more available. Yeah, Karen, let me just die for less than 15 an hour. As a man being asked about a spouse, do you have a wife? Number. Well, gay marriage is legal in this state. I assume you don't have a husband? Number. When you can't tell if they're being extra PC or extra anti-PC. A while back I got out of the Navy. That old saying is true, swear like a sailor. I applied for a program called Helmets to Hard Hats that finds jobs in skilled labor trades for veterans. My father is good friends with a guy who is in charge of the local branch of an elevator company. So I applied to the International Union of Elevator Constructors and was granted an interview. Union interviews, as I am told, usually consist of several prominent members of the union. In this case it included my father's friend. So I show up to the interview and sit down with 5 high-ranking union members. My name is Richard. My dad's friend says, so Richard, what do you like to go by? Rick, Ricky, Richard, Dong? Before I could stop myself I sarcastically replied, it's Dong actually. I pretended like everything was normal and the interview continued after an awkward pause. I did get the job and was admitted as an apprentice. Everyone still calls me Dong. TLDR. Guy asked me, Richard, if I go by Dong. I sarcastically replied Dong. And now everyone calls me Dong. Are you pregnant? And after I said no. Are you planning to get pregnant? Had an interviewer who unexpectedly asked me what my spirit animal was at the end of the interview. I didn't know what to say, but the first thing that popped out of my head was a bear, because the thought of hibernating and being lazy on cold season sounds like something I'd do. It's the most stupidest reply I could give. He ended up being one of the best. if not the nicest and funniest boss I ever had? Actually, that's a good question. Listen, I have nothing against hiring a chick for the job, but I can't afford to have you go off on maternity leave, so are you planning on getting knocked up in the near future? Very first job I interviewed for was a movie theater while I was still in high school. Manager: are you available Sunday morning? Me: yes, I have open availability. Manager: so you don't attend church Sunday morning? Me: no, I'm free. Manager: oh, so you're gonna burn in heck? Me: oh, sorry, huh. Manager: nothing, it's fine. At my last job, a bank, we were open Sundays. A regular and his friend came in. The friend asked me if I went to church that morning. I said no. Then, he asked my older co-worker, who also told him no. The guy said that they needed to open later to give us time to go to church. We were open from 12:04. When we opened had nothing to do with whether or not I was going to church. I was a bit nervous at my first job interview for a full-time job when I was 18. I applied as a wedding dress salesperson. I had a part-time job at a rival bridal store years earlier, and I think the owners sensed that I was nervous because one asked me if I had a boyfriend and if working on the weekends would give me less time with him. Before I could answer, the second owner asked, and is he a good kisser? All I could muster is oh, he's alright, and spent the rest of the interview discussing whether or not they can plan a wedding between me and the good kisser. Anyways, I got the job, worked there for 5 years and married the good kisser. Does profanity and yelling bother you? That should have been an instant Texas-sized red flag. The interview was in Dallas after all, but this was the only job interview I had coming out of college, and with student loan payments looming I needed a goddamn job. So I still took this one. Never could have imagined what awaited me. I swear one of the owners of the company, the one I worked with most, was unmedicated bipolar or something. One minute he would be handing you $100 bills for just being there, and the next he'd be red in the face throwing a kindergarten-style temper tantrum, screaming and swearing at you. It was completely unpredictable. One day I was working with a new employee and we were walking across a warehouse with some tools to move some equipment. He comes up to us and asks us what we're doing. I say we're getting ready to move that piece of equipment over there. He asks what we're doing right now and I repeat myself. He starts screaming something about not hiring us to frick off, wasting time, and stomps off with a couple of his managers following him, who he promptly screams at to get away from him. When I gave my 2 weeks notice a few months later, that same dude comes and talks to me and literally tells me that when they first hired me they thought I was stupid, but since they put me on that project renovating that warehouse into a manufacturing facility I'd been killing it. He proceeded to offer me a managerial position in that building when it was up and running, which would include a 60% raise. I'd have been making $60K only a year out of college, which for my degree is pretty good. Still quit because I'd seen the crap other managers had to deal with and it was way worse than what I dealt with. They were the layer between me and the company ownership, so they were dealing with the dude even more than me, and I was just done with that. I also just didn't like where I was living. I'm not a city person, and the more I saw of DFW, the more I hated living there, and summers were absolutely miserable. That turned into a much longer post than I was expecting it to. I had a boss like this. 50/50 on her being lovely to me or flying off the handle over nothing. Quit, took a different job for the same money but less experience or prestige. That boss got me my career track job 3 years later. 10/10 would quit the crazy again. I was once asked about my religious upbringing in a job. I'm a teacher. The new principal was apparently a heavy born-again Christian type. My friends who had recommended me for the position had not had similar questions with the previous principal and were completely shocked I was asked this question. I am not religious and did not get the job. I was raised in the Church of Labor Laws, where we listened to sermons on things like illegal job interview questions. I worked admin for a while just out of high school. I was interviewing for this answering service that was mostly women in their 40s through their 60s. A pretty small operation. No men at all other than the owner. They answered for the electric company at night, like when the power went out. A lot of doctors after hours and things like that, and glass companies. You get the idea. Well, everything was going great until they told me that there was a guy renting the office upstairs that they answered for who owned an adult entertainment line, and was I comfortable transferring his calls. I was 18 and rather naive stupid, and had no idea what they meant. So I say sure, why wouldn't I? So then they start asking me if I mind listing my measurements on the phone for them and to run through a practice call with them. I'm like, wait, what? So they do a pretend call and are breathing heavy and start saying the rather seedy stuff, and I'm trying not to laugh because now I'm like, wait, what is this job? Am I actually interviewing for something else? But this woman interviewing me was like 350 pounds. 55 years old and faking a man's voice as she pretended on the phone she wanted to ram her rod into my. Well, you get the idea. And I'm like, so this pays minimum wage? M61, late 70s State College. I was looking for a part-time gig while going through school. Dude at a small engineering firm called me in response to my resume and arranged a 7 PM interview since I had class till 6. First 20 minutes were fine and fairly standard questions. He then pulls out a few inkblot type sheets of paper and asks, what do you see? Nothing struck me, so he folded the paper in half and held it up to the light. The images blended to become a silhouette of a guy on all fours getting boned in the backside by another guy. I noped the heck out of there and surprisingly did not get hired. Sadly amusing now, as I was far more innocent and didn't appreciate the sketchiness of that situation. I hope the guy wasn't ever successful in conning naive undergrads to work there after hours with him. Because I mentioned I was getting married soon, she asked if I planned to have kids because it would interfere with the job. It was for hotel housekeeping. She also showed up an hour late to the interview and told me I had been late, scheduled 2 interviews for the same time, and suggested I was lying about a previous boss having cancer. I got a call back and never responded. Red flags all over the place. Not me, but my co-worker and I worked in mental health. He was asked at an interview how he felt about relationships with clients. This was for an addictions clinic. He gave the response that he wouldn't consider it and that it would be unethical. Apparently, their response was that it's fine, that they had done so before, and it felt like they were trying to convince him that it was something he should do too. He didn't accept the job. For myself, it would probably be, do you know who Tracy Chapman is? Me. Yes. Do you watch Glee? Me. No, you're hired, and if you could have a superpower, what would it be? I'm convinced most interviewers have no idea what they're doing and just add in random crap. My first job was at a big medical center, where I had worked part-time in a related department. I was being hired to work for Gary, and was being interviewed by Gary and his boss Niels as well as several other people. I was invited to a staff meeting just before the interview started. No one introduced me to anyone and must have figured I knew everyone, and so I went through a day talking to all these people, not sure who was who. Significantly, I mixed up Gary and Niels since Gary acted like the top man and was very dominating, whereas Niels said hardly anything. Somehow I got hired and worked there for many years. You have to be fine to work 12-hour shifts with one break of 30 minutes in the middle. When I explained that that is literally illegal, they replied with, but it's the industry standard. See, get fricked. This was an interview from a government-funded job agency, BTW. They almost definitely make commissions on finding jobs, so they don't care if you have a crap job because then they get 2 commissions instead of 1. I was the interviewer and asked the candidate to tell me about a time that they had to have a difficult conversation with someone. His answer? Well, my friend's boyfriend was abusing her, so I told him that I would kick his butt if he didn't stop. He didn't stop, so I had to follow through and beat him up. It was hard, but I had to follow through on my commitment to helping my friend. He did not get hired for the job working with children. Well, at least you know he's not a quitter. My 9th and final interview at a world-renowned investment bank with the big boss. I have flown in for the interview, which is scheduled for 9 AM. I arrive at 8:45 and am left waiting until 9:45. Interviewer walks in. He says, verbatim, "Sorry I'm fricking late, the fricking bastards in back kept me up for 15 fricking minutes." He throws my CV on the table so hard the front page rips off the staple and flitters across the table. He looks me square in the eye. "So, who the frick are you again?" I was told being thick and a little gothy would provide a lot of variety to the male clients, and I would make tons in tips. My future boss asked to duel me in Mortal Kombat. I was confused and concerned until he showed me that they had a Mortal Kombat 2 arcade machine. He kicked my butt solidly. Honestly, it seemed a little unfair considering they had a machine in their break room and I hadn't played the dang thing since high school. Funny, it's always the last thing the guy got fired for. It's always this oddly phrased question too. Like, can you be on time every day and not be sick all the time? Can you do the job and not smell like marijuana every day? Can you do the job and not complain every 5 seconds? Not a job interview per se, but a first meeting of my now mother-in-law. After her asking my name and me replying with "It's Ryan, nice to meet you," I was then asked, "Is that your big boy name?" What? To this day, almost 8 years later, I, along with my wife, have no idea what she meant by that question. I was in an interview for a college scholarship, not a job. I'm black, and was being interviewed by a panel of 4 white interviewers and 1 black interviewer. One of the white interviewers asked me how I was growing up with both parents a black interviewer, and I immediately locked eyes and he gave me a knowing look. I don't remember how I answered, but I got the scholarship. The real reason I asked you in today is because your last name sounded like you're white. We've had the worst luck with black guys doing the job right. I get that all the time. I have a super French name, like Pierre de Fromage, and I am very American. I always get asked in job interviews what my nationality is. I also get a lot of people asking if I really am Pierre de Fromage after we talk on the phone or meet for the first time. Something about Pierre de Fromage doesn't make people think thick southern accent. I'm a teacher. I was asked if I do drugs. I don't. Been clean and sober for a while. The interviewer asks me again, a little louder, "Do you do drugs?" Number. Well, he says, I can't tell you the number of people that have sat there and say they don't do drugs and then fail the drug test. I'm 50 years old. WTF. Pee in the cup and passed. Your salary expectations are completely unrealistic. Clearly you're overpaid, but we'll help you adapt when you join us. I hope you're still overpaid. I once was on a full day job interview and only after the first hour realized I had interviewed there before. I got many puzzled looks but no one said anything. I was a young female cabinet maker applying for a summer job in a joinery workshop. I answered all of his questions which I could tell confused him. So he gave me some side eye and asked her, "How strong are you?" A lady in an office behind him shouted out, "You're not allowed to ask that." I got the job. Turns out it was his wife shouting at him. I worked for a farmer supply company of less than 20 people where a high percentage of employees had amusement park experience. I was told by HR I was not allowed to ask the engineering interns, "Do you have any theme park experience?" If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.